When you hear the term hyperpop, what actually comes to your head? 2020, COVID, Money Machine, oh my god, what a time. This form of music, hyperpop, had different levels to it. Doing a quick Google search of what artists are considered hyperpop, names like 100 Gex, Charlie XCX, one of my favorite artists of all time by the way, Eric Doa, Glaive, Midwest would come up. Now, only one of those artists I just actually said makes good music, but as for the others, their music is audible dirt. But with those artists Google suggested, that's not exactly what I'm talking about when I think of real, actual hyperpop music. Maybe certain elements, of course, but not the full-blown thing. I'm thinking about real hyperpop. Nova Gang, Youngster Jack, Funeral, Weedo, when OS Quinn was on her whole hyperpop tip. The reason I'm making this video is because a song from Weedo randomly came on shuffle while I was in my car the other day, and I had someone in the car with me. I immediately skipped the song because of because of how insane the song was. Hearing that kind of music now, it just sounds awful. I'm gonna be honest. See, I was wondering what happened to a particular artist in the space named Weedo, and man, I'm not gonna lie, like at one point I genuinely enjoyed his music, so I went looking for him to see what he was up to, and apparently he's been missing for over a year. I was just like, damn. At one point, especially during the COVID era, I could not escape this man's song Pitfall and Slap Me. It was going viral. His biggest song has almost 700,000 plays, so I'm like, okay, how does someone go from virality to literally disappearing? And it made me think, oh wait, all of those hyperpop artists aren't really making a lot of noise anymore. I feel like the artists who were prominent in that scene have moved on from that sound. And then the question arises, why? In order to understand why hyperpop has seemingly died off, we need to go back to why it really took off in the first place. So a lot of you kids may not understand this, but at one point, there was a really big trend of nightcore music. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and act like nightcore isn't still massive, but back in 2009, oh my god, true scene kid with blue highlights in their hair, with a Misfits shirt listening to nightcore on their headphones. So lame. Yeah, that was me actually. I listened to a lot of nightcore back then, an actual unhealthy amount. And I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in that case. The whole scene kid movement was massive, all across America actually. This was also that wave of dubstep and different forms of internet culture establishing themselves. I mean, it's crazy. 2009 was a long ass time ago compared to 2023, but it really wasn't that long ago. Either way, I feel like the roots of hyperpop started here. Pitched up vocals, sounds that sound like the audio did heroin right before the song starts playing, vocal chops. This is really where it all started in my opinion. And then we get into the quote-unquote mainstream conversation of hyperpop, and with that would come the names I mentioned earlier like Charlie XCX and 100 Gex. Now, I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way. You can sacrifice me in the comments if you want, I don't care, but 100 Gex to me personally is not good music. And I'm not blindly hating either. Like, I swear I listened to a lot of their music before making this video, really trying to get a good understanding of what type of sound they emit, and the sound was astonishingly awful. Now, of course, you're gonna have your people saying, oh, well, you don't get it, and yada yada, whatever. I have my opinion, I think they're terrible. But anyway, 100 Gex is one of the biggest faces for quote-unquote hyperpop, you could say, because the kind of music they make is basically everything you would technically hear in a hyperpop song. Just nonsensical shit that a normal person won't be able to understand. They basically do what we already recognize as pop music and turn it up to like 99 out of 10. Like, think of every element you hear in a song. You'd have the lyrics, which would be astonishing loud in a song by 100 Gex. You'd have the beat of the song, which is turned up insanely loud and at a speed Sonic would cringe at. My point being, this type of music with 100 Gex is just everything that would make a song, throwing it in a blender with steroids, and whatever comes out is what you're going to hear. And for some reason with their project 1000 Gex, this resonated with people, like a lot of people. People genuinely enjoy this music, and I'll probably never really understand why, but clearly it's not for me to understand. 1000 Gex is genuinely regarded as a classic. Somehow, there's articles on top of articles about how this was one of the best albums to ever come out of 2019. This duo really tapped into a market that hadn't been hit yet at that point. And I appreciate the weirdness of it and the artistry, but I just don't understand the sound. And the funny part is, they aren't the ones who started it. People should actually refer to Sophie as someone who really pushed this sound into a bigger picture, but not as big as 100 Gex. Really behind 100 Gex, there's more of a virality behind their music, as one of their biggest songs, Money Machine, is just a meme that's used from time to time at this point. But Sophie, on the other hand, she has that more experimental sound to her music that makes you feel like you're actually experiencing something rather than just loud noise and heroin. But enough about 100 trash cans. Someone else in the mainstream when hyperpop is being discussed is Charlie XCX. XCX, undeniably biased as she is one of my favorite artists of all time. Charli XCX started out as more of a regular pop artist, hailing from Essex. She would get her international success from the song I Love It, a collaboration between her and Hyperpop, the Swedish duo. But we're not here to talk about her upbringing and her rise to fame. Let's talk about why her name is associated with the term hyperpop and what she exactly brought to the table. Now, ironically enough, Sophie, who I briefly brought up earlier, actually helped Charli get into this whole hyperpop movement by producing songs for her. Now, keep in mind, this is 2016 we're talking about here. The name hyperpop wasn't exactly around yet, so at the time, this new wave that Charli was on didn't exactly have a pinpoint in it. And as she chose to leave her more melodic, regular pop sound behind her, in collaboration with Sophie, she created music that was much more avant-garde at the time. Roll With Me, Lip Gloss, After Party, No Angel. Hearing these songs now, you would definitely understand why Charli XCX is associated with the term hyperpop. What a lot of people fail to remember is that hyperpop isn't a real genre. It's just a name that was made up by Spotify and just a word to throw at this experimental sound. And it's honestly just too loose of a term, because to me, hyperpop is super overdone, but it has different rules to it. One area, you've got the elements, maybe the occasional weird noise, but the other side, the more controversial and juiced up side, is what I consider real hyperpop. You hear that beat? How off the wall it sounds? That type of beat is what I consider hyperpop. It's the instrumental to She Asked What My Life Is by Eric Doa, one of the first true hyperpop songs I ever really heard to this extent. And at the time, I moderately enjoyed this song. It sent me down a really, really deep rabbit hole. And the deeper I got, the more confused I was. Like I said earlier, Charli XCX is one of my favorite artists for a lot of different reasons. So hearing a song like this, I could hear her on it, you know? Because it sounds like something she would have got on in 2016. So I checked out more of Eric Doa's music at the time, and that's how I discovered Glaive, then I discovered Parker, now known as Quinn, and these artists at one point were great, but I kept going deeper and deeper. Then I discovered Dollywood One, who makes insane music now, but was regarded as a hyperpop artist 3 years ago. The song I honestly might just give up is the definition of a true hyperpop song. The glitching voice, the super obnoxious beeping synth in the beat, it just emanates that outdated sound. And to some degree, the music he makes today still derives from that, but one song I want to focus on in particular, and I think is a huge turning point in the genre, is Push It by Weedo. Now, I can't play it because of copyright, but the way I would describe this song is like someone put your brain inside of a soda can, shook it up really hard, and put Mentos inside of it. It's all over the place, and at one point in 2020, it was going viral on TikTok. Now, when this song was going viral, you started to hear more and more of this sound, and it almost became a competition to see who can make the craziest hyperpop song. Now, I could go on and on all day about all these different artists who emerged from this era, like Heaven, Kuru, Ainon Banzai, Pitfall, Exodus 1900, Curtains, but I want to talk about someone who I personally believe was pushing this sound in the underground well before it even became what it really was. David Shoddy. Now, David Shoddy I've spoken about on my channel before, but I've never really explained his true significance into how he pushed this amazing sound into the mainstream underground. I know, crazy sentence, mainstream underground. David Shoddy more so started off as a plug artist, working with Kalari, Mexico Dro, and Ginseng. And hearing arguably his biggest song of all time, Honda, you wouldn't expect the guy who made that to make this. David. I got pink strips, I got blue strips, kids in her teeth like a toothpick. She wear glasses, she look like a dude. It's a completely different sound, but how did he even get to this point? Now, obviously, David has had outside influences on his music, of course, and while I believe that definitely pushed his sound further, in my honest opinion, I think it was drugs. In the music video for one of my favorite songs by David, On My Shirt, you can literally see a line of Booga Sugar on a fucking Nintendo DS. It's clear David Shoddy was going through some things, and it transpired in his music. Now, I don't know the man personally, but I do believe drugs played a heavy part into how he went from a plug artist to this whole glitchcore sound. I went through every single available song on David Shoddy's SoundCloud, and the earliest song I could find with the actual hyperpop sound to it was Back of the Club with My Blade, produced by Keyblade. I think this is where it started because after this song, David's sound never really regressed back into that classic plug sound, except for Wizard 101, which has that glitchcore sound to it, which is mixed in with plug. I really really believe David was one of the first people in the underground scene to push this glitchy, insane sound that was very new at the time. Because I've been listening to him for so long, I even remember when people were hating on this sound at one point, and now it's normal. David Shawty was ahead of his time, and it delved into all the people I talked about earlier, like Funeral, I9 Bonsai, and Weedo, real hyperpop-esque artists. But why did it die? Why was it so all in your face, inescapable even, to now having to actually search for new hyperpop artists? And the answer to that question is a lot simpler than you would actually think. Now here's the thing, I kind of lied. To say hyperpop is dead would be a bold-faced lie. I think hyperpop as a subgenre in and of itself went in reverse. And when I say that, I mean hyperpop went from underground and only being listened to by people who were actually tapped in to mainstream with all the virality back to underground, because it would be stupid to just say it's completely dead and no one's doing it anymore. It's definitely still being created, and maybe in a different way, but it's still being made. Think about it like this. OS Quinn doesn't make that kind of music anymore. She's moved on to more of a relaxing indie sound. Glaive just dropped a project a few months ago with most of the songs deriving from alternative rock, a very far launch from the subgenre hyperpop. Midwest, same deal. A lot of the artists that were making this kind of music have just simply moved on from it, and that's probably because hyperpop isn't timeless. It's not the kind of music that was planning on being around for long. It was a trend. I think most of the prominent artists in that subgenre were smart enough to see that. This is just a nitpick, but I think something else that played into it fading off so quickly is you had that oversaturation in the genre. Respectfully, artists like Tuv should not have been making hyperpop music, and I'm only saying that because it wasn't good. Again, no disrespect, I love Tuv, but his hyperpop songs were terrible, and he was aware of that.
I wasn't a big fan of your hyperpop. No one was, bro. You're not alone on that. You're not alone. I want to escape hyperpop as quick as possible. See, don't take it too seriously when I say this, but like, fuck ear candy, bro. You guys don't even fucking like hyperpop, man. I have to leave this shit so bad. Oh my God.
You still have those artists that are very talented that most people don't particularly know about yet. But as for that mainstream COVID era glitchcore hyperpop sound, I really don't think it's coming back anytime soon because, well, it's kind of dead.